So lovely to see everyone here tonight. The weather sure cooperated, which was great. I'm Linda Harling-Stalker, the director of the Mulroney Institute of Government, and I have the honor of welcoming this evening's distinguished speaker, the Honourable Lisa Raitt. First, I'd like to acknowledge that we are meeting in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. As we listen to this evening's talk, let us keep in mind the 7 grandfather teachings: love, honesty, humility, truth, courage, respect, and wisdom. These should act as a guide for how we treat ourselves, other people, and the world around us. This evening, we are so fortunate to have the Honourable Lisa Raitt joining us. Ms. Raitt is Vice Chair in the Office of the CEO at CIBC Capital Markets. Her current focus is to advise various parts of CIBC on geopolitical developments. In 2008, Ms. Raitt was elected to the House of Commons. During her time in office, she held 3 senior portfolios: Minister of Natural Resources, Minister of Labour, and Minister of Transport. She was also Deputy Leader of the Official Opposition and the Conservative Party of Canada. Most importantly, she holds a Bachelor of Science degree from StFX. And then she went off to some other places and did a master's degree at the University of Guelph and a law degree at Osgoode Hall Law School. With Anne McClellan, Ms. Raitt is the co-chair of the Coalition for a Better Future. This past fall, this dynamic duo were awarded the 2025 Dedication to Democracy Award from the Parliamentary Centre. Since 2025, she has been the board chair here at StFX, the best role she holds, I'm sure. While a sitting MP, Ms. Raitt's world suddenly changed in 2016. Her partner was diagnosed with young-onset Alzheimer's in his mid-50s. Since then, Ms. Raitt has worked tirelessly as an advocate for Alzheimer's and dementia care, and to bring recognition to the importance of caregivers in this journey. This evening, Ms. Raitt will share her experiences as a caregiver and the lessons she has learned along the way. Acting as moderator for this evening's talk is our very own Dr. Katie Aubrecht, an associate professor in sociology, Canada Research Chair in Health Equity and Social Justice, and I think her most important title, Mulroney Institute Fellow, not that I'm biased. She directs the Spatializing Care Intersectional Disability Studies Lab and co-directs the Center for Aging and Disability Justice, both interdisciplinary policy-oriented research hubs that bring together students, scholars, and community partners to address structural determinants of health. Her rapid response research on dementia care during COVID-19 informed her current 5-year, $3.5 million New Horizons for Seniors Pan-Canadian Collective Impact Project. This project aims to strengthen social connections and mental health in rural Nova Scotia. Through this work, she unites community organizations, local governments, and service providers to advance equitable, culturally responsive supports for older adults and caregivers. So without further ado, please welcome the Honourable Lisa Raitt to the podium.
Oh, wow. I just looked around for the first time. There's a lot of you here. Okay. Thank you for coming, first of all. I know it's a really nice night out there, and I'm sure you'd rather be, I don't know, cleaning off some snow somewhere, but I'm glad that you came in here tonight and spend some hours with us. I'm going to talk for 10 minutes just at the top in terms of prepared comments. And then Dr. Katie, where are you? saw you a minute ago. There you are. She's going to come up. We're going to have a conversation with some questions that she has. But this will only be really helpful to you if you ask me the questions you really want answers to. And I will tell you, I will give you the response. It's not going to be like question period, where it's called question period, not answer period. I will give you answers, not just entertain your questions. So please do think about it while we're going through, and I'm happy to give whatever perspective I can. I also had a question before I began. Who's doing the interpretation? It's fantastic. I wish I had that when I sat on a French board. Holy mackerel, I could have used that instead of the hours of pain that I endured. It looks great. I'm glad you have it. It's fantastic. It makes it far more accessible to everybody. So, as Linda pointed out, first of all, big thanks to the Mulroney Institute of Government for having me here today. I've enjoyed so much time here on the campus talking to students, talking to administrators, and it's been a wonderful day, and I really liked it. And it has changed since 1989 when I was last here as a student in science. But I want to thank Donna Zisklag, and I want to thank Linda for both of you putting together an incredible day with really precise and very helpful, very, very helpful agendas. I knew where I was going at any given time. And it's been a long time since that happened. I used to get that treatment when I was a minister. I do not get that treatment now. My kids don't tell me where to go at all. Well, they tell me where to go, but you know what I mean. It's a different kind of where to go. So thank you both very, very much for this. It's obviously the Institute is in great hands because you're taking care of someone like me, and I'm very high maintenance. Not really. So let me tell you a little bit about Bruce. Bruce was, well, let me start from the beginning. Question I get oftentimes is, when did you know? When did you know there was a problem? Well, I knew there was a problem, but I didn't know it was Alzheimer's. That's the key. I knew there was something wrong in our relationship. I assumed we were just heading for a breakup, which was very hard to hear because we had a house together and you know, we were partners for about 8 years at that point in time. And I was pretty distressed because I had already gone through divorce. I didn't want this to happen again, but man, he just changed. He changed in so many ways. He wasn't attentive. He was not emotional. In 2014, do you remember when there was the disturbance on the Hill and the gentleman came into the House of Parliament with the gun and we got locked down? My kids were taken out of school by their principals and sent home, and they had a shelter in place. It was very traumatic. My husband, Bruce, in 2014, didn't even call to see if I was okay. When I called him that night after finally being released, I said, "Hey, did you catch what was going on TV? I didn't hear from you." And he goes, "No, I was too busy doing other things today." I thought, oh, okay, he really doesn't care for me anymore. This is a very big indicator that our relationship is not going in the right direction. So I was preparing for something really horrible. Not the really, really horrible thing that we ended up getting, but explained everything. I would go to Ottawa on Monday mornings, and by the time Tuesday night would roll around, he would call me and he'd be screaming at me, accusing me of all kinds of things I was running around on him. I didn't pay attention to him. How dare I leave him? He's lonely at home. Things can't get on. And I thought, this is strange because he knew me only as a member of parliament. He only knew me as going to work on Monday, coming home on Friday. And it was just so out of character. And I never thought it could be anything to do with physical health. I always thought it was just another sign that it wasn't going well. I tell you this in all honesty, because this is a very, very common thread in people's journey with Alzheimer's, that the relationship between the spouses is the first thing that kind of hits the rocks in young onset Alzheimer's. The second thing that hits the rocks, the employment. The amount of people who are fired from their jobs because of their lack of attention to detail or their overt, I would say, argumentativeness is staggering. And that's problematic because you lose your job in your mid-50s. It's a big deal, as some of you may unfortunately know, but you also lose all your health benefits, and you definitely lose your long-term care and or your long-term disability. So that was the other thing that we were lucky on, that Bruce was, they were preparing to fire him in January of 2016. They had the letter drafted. He was the CEO of the Hamilton Port Authority. They walked into his office, the chair of the board and the chair of the HR committee, and they sat him down and said, look, we've done a review of your performance. We've talked to everybody in the company, 360 review, and we've got some great concerns. They're in here. And they were just about to say that that's it, you're done. And Bruce got up and left the room. And he called me and he said, this is happening right now. What do I do? He excused himself to go to the washroom. I said, go to the doctor downstairs and get a medical note right away and just say you're under stress. Because I knew he was under stress and I knew things were wrong. He had said to me in November, there's something wrong with my brain. I didn't clue into that at the time. But he said, there's something wrong with my brain. So I said, you probably need more vitamin B12. I look dumb now, don't I? But that was my solution. It doesn't work, by the way, just to let everyone know. So we went down to see Doc Wally, who was a golf friend of Bruce's. Doc Wally wrote him a note on the spot, but Doc Wally also did a really quick test on Alzheimer's, which he didn't tell us about. He gave a referral to Bruce as well to go see a doctor in a couple months at St. Joseph's in Hamilton, Ontario. So he avoided getting fired in that moment, which was a lifesaver, because without having his disability benefits, I don't know what would have happened in terms of our family, because it would have been left with the very, very difficult financial circumstances, which is what a lot of families do actually experience. So fast forward, it's March. Oh, in the meantime, I'm a member of parliament. We're going on a trip to Israel with other members of parliament in 2016, Liberal, NDP, ourselves, the Bloc. And I asked Bruce to come along since he was on leave, right? He couldn't go to work for a couple months. He's on stress leave. And he says, sure. When we get to Israel, we're going to our first evening event. And I said, this is a jacket event, so you have to put a jacket on. And when he opened up his suitcase, which he was in charge of packing because I don't pack for him, all he had was some socks, no underwear, 2 pairs of shorts, definitely no jacket in there, barely any pants, like 1 pair of jeans, I think. And I said to him, what happened? Like, what are you thinking? And he just said, I don't know. I don't know what happened. I didn't know what to do. I kind of fluffed it off as stress. I said, oh, he's under stress. That's, of course I would be, I'm concerned about all these things. We get to March. 2 days before the appointment with this specialist. By the way, I didn't know what the specialist was. I didn't look it up. I assumed we were going for a cardiovascular kind of thing, to be honest, because of his age, and his dad had heart problems. So I thought maybe it was heart related. But the doctor's office called and said, Lisa, we need you to come with your husband to this appointment. And I went, oh, okay, it's fine. It works out. I'm not sitting this week. I assumed I was going because he was going to have drops put in his eyes and wouldn't be able to drive afterwards. Yeah, that was completely wrong. That was really not the case. We get in, we get separated. He is taken to one room. I'm taken to another. The doctor sits me down, starts going through a case history, understanding what's going on. And I said, wait a second. I had noticed on the door that it says gerontology. Like, what kind of doctor are you? And he said, I'm a gerontologist psychologist. I deal with people with dementia. And I went, what? You're kidding me. And he said, no, let's keep going through the history. And in that moment, honestly, I was being truthful up to then. Then I started covering for Bruce. Then I started saying, well, no, it wasn't that bad. Yeah, he forgot that the garbage bag was full of clothing. It wasn't full of garbage. And that's why he threw out all of his suits, which is a true story. And I was just covering for him, and I wasn't being truthful anymore with the doctor because I was so afraid of the diagnosis. So we finish up. I go back into the waiting room. In the meantime, the doctor said, it'll be another hour for testing of Bruce. 20 minutes later, the nurse came back in, doctor came back in, and he said, listen, I have to tell you, we've had to stop the testing because Bruce is so upset he can't stop crying because he can't answer any of the questions. And I think it was the first time he understood just how bad it was for him. It all became clear. And the doctor said, in my clinical experience, and I have many years behind me, my diagnosis is young-onset Alzheimer's. And the first thing I said was, I want a second opinion. And he said, well, you can have one. You can go get one. You're going to hear exactly the same thing. It wasn't great bedside manner. Okay. It really wasn't great bedside manner. He actually kind of got my back up. He was insulted that I challenged him, and therefore he was kind of pushing back. And I said, okay, well, I'll get it. But I also want a diagnostic. What tests do we need to do? Do we need to do a genetic test? Do we need to do an MRI? What can we do so we can be sure? Because this doesn't make sense to me. And he said, there's nothing we can do. We can try this SpEX scan. We can take a look. 10 years ago, there's been some advancements since then in terms of diagnostics, but he gave me a script to go and get this done. But he also said, and by the way, your husband shouldn't be driving, and I'm going to take his keys away. And I said, so you're not. That's not going to happen. And for some reason, he listened to me, and we didn't take his car keys away at that time. It did come later. It had to come later, but it wasn't in that moment. However, Bruce had to go and prove that he could drive. So he didn't lose his license, but he was told he had to go and pass a test to prove that he could drive. And he did, thank goodness. In fact, he drove really well, which was always frustrating to me because I would see all those signs of dementia, but the minute he got into public or anybody with a white coat, it's like, no, there's nothing there. So the doctor comes in, he gives me his diagnosis. I say no. And then the doctor says, and I don't think I can tell Bruce because he's so emotionally fragile right now. I don't know what the news will do. So I'll leave it to you to tell him he has Alzheimer's. Well, oh, okay. So in other words, we're not telling him because I wasn't going to be telling him either. And he gave me some pamphlets and he said, contact the Alzheimer's Society and good luck. And that was it. That's how we were told. So I cried for 3 days and I couldn't tell anybody. Because immediately I am very outward. I live my life outside. I talk about things, but man, that stigma hit and it hit hard. And I did not want to talk about my husband having Alzheimer's because I felt the stigma in that moment. So we left. I called Baycrest in Toronto because I knew somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody. And I said, I'd like to have a second opinion, walk them through what we had done. And they said, okay, you can come in May. Here's the problem, though. Bruce was so traumatized by that whole experience, he refused to go to the doctors. I had to put the doctor on conference call in the house and follow Bruce around with the phone as he wandered through the house because he was so mad that I was making him talk to a doctor about possibly having this kind of disease. He ended up getting the diagnosis. When we went to see the doctor at Baycrest, he became very agitated. Bruce is 6'2", 250 pounds, very strong man. The doctor became very concerned about his own welfare as he was talking to Bruce, didn't want to be alone in the room with him. So I was in the room for the whole thing. But we got the diagnosis and we were told, 7 years. Do what you can in the next couple of years. You don't need to come back and see me. You can try this drug. It may help you. It may not help you, but there's no cure. There's no mitigation. And at some point in time, you're probably going to need some home services. And good luck. We'll see you again. And that was kind of it. So you're kind of kicked out on your own. And I'm wrapping up here and then we'll get into questions. You can ask me anything. Remember, there's 10 years of stories here, kids. I can tell you forever. But the one thing that I remember walking out, and thank you for denoting the fact that I was very much in debt to student loans when I finished my education. I have a lot of it. But I thought to myself, okay, I have a master's in chemistry. I've got a law degree. I was a cabinet minister, and I am absolutely and I'm a lawyer, and I'm absolutely lost on what to do in this field. I can't imagine what it's like for anyone else who doesn't have the contacts or the capabilities that I do to be able to deal with something like this. So when Bruce finally did understand what he had, we had a chat and I said, how do you want to handle this? And he said, well, I don't want anyone else to not know what to do, so we're going to talk about it. And I said, okay, but you're going to talk about it. We did an interview right away with Don Martin on Power Play. Political show. I know it's odd, but Don was a friend of ours. And I announced in the House of I didn't announce in the House of Commons. On September 24th of 2016, I did a standing statement in the House for Caregivers Day. And at the end of it, I started to cry, which is never a good thing. Harper's going, what is she crying about now? What is going on? But the news people picked up on it right away. And somebody called me from CBC and said, why are you crying, Raitt? Like, what's going on? This is not normal. And I told her, I said, Bruce got diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And as I told her and I told Don Martin, who was my friend, our friend, Don said, come on the show and talk about it. And we did. And Bruce went on the show. And at least I have that moment. I have a lot of moments of Bruce talking about his disease. But he, in those next 2 years, as he could, wanted to talk to as many people as possible about the disease, giving them advice, what to do, how to do it. And that was a very nice 2 years where we worked together on the topic. And afterwards, behaviors and symptoms kick in, and it's really not a lot you can do. So when I stand here and tell you all the gory details of what it entails to be a caregiver to a spouse with young onset Alzheimer, it's because I have his agency and permission to do so to this day. Now, I'm never going to tell you embarrassing things. I'm going to tell you the facts, though. And it's something that he felt strongly about, I feel strongly about. So whenever, to the YouTube world who's watching this right now, if you want to send me a note telling me that my husband would never give me permission to do this, he did. And I have it. So, waste your ink on someone else, because people do like calling to tell me that I shouldn't be talking about it. But that kind of stuff, that's what causes stigma to continue to happen. So we're going to do it. And now I'm ready. Dr. Katie, come on up. Cue the applause. That was very shameless of me, wasn't it? You also have great audio in here. Man, oh man. Mr. Mulroney did it right when he had this built.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing such a thoughtful and personal perspective with us today. And with your background, especially as a former parliamentarian, the first woman to serve as deputy leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. And your leadership presently and historically in the financial sector, as well as your role as chair of the Board of Governors here at StFX. So you bring a really unique lens to this conversation. And I guess to get us started, I wondered if, from that vantage point, if you could tell us a little bit about how you see caregiving, especially dementia caregiving, shaping the way that we think about leadership today.
Yeah. Very good question. My most favorite firstism is I was the first female transport minister in this country. And that was the job I always wanted. I mean, it would be nice to be prime minister, but it comes with a lot of hassles. But I really liked being transport minister, and I'm very, very proud of that. So what my lens on caregiving, I would say that public policy moves too slow to deal with the reality of the pace of this disease. And the reason being is that the pace of the disease is deceiving. When you get your diagnosis, it kind of goes like this at the top, and then it takes a boom, big swing down, and then it flattens out. So most folks think that when you're caring for somebody who unfortunately has cancer or kidney problems, it's usually a shorter period of time. A dementia diagnosis, especially in a young person, 12 to 20 years is what you're looking at. No idea who told me that. It's a long time. We're in year 10. My husband is healthy. He can live for another 4 to 5. If he eats, he can live for a long time. It's completely in his hands. So the first thing that I think about is how we are not fully equipped in this country for the longevity of people with dementia. Normally in a nursing home, the rule of thumb used to be 18 months is how long somebody survived once they went into a nursing home. It is not that anymore at all. You're reaching 3, 5, 7 years, which of course backs up the entire system. And that means you get more people in hospitals who are taking up those beds instead of people who are in need of surgery, in need of physiotherapy, whatever, other kinds of illnesses that may happen. So the longevity of the caregiving is not understood very clearly, I think, by policymakers. And I would say, it's a bad term to use because I'm talking about dementia and death, but you're whistling past the graveyard, literally, as you try to figure out what you're going to do. Adding more beds is helpful, but you got to think about the big picture of what's going on. And the reason being is that the impact of caregiving in dementia specifically is significant. And I have some statistics. I was writing them down before I came up. But just to let you know, because it's never pleasant, but you have a 63% higher mortality risk when you're a caregiver. One of the things that really surprised me was understanding and learning that people The caregivers sometimes die before their loved ones because of the amount of stress, the cortisol, the inflammation, the depression, the isolation, you name it. You are twice as likely to have the risk of depression compared to somebody else. You have a higher rate of heart disease, hypertension, weight change, chronic fatigue, weakened immune response. These are all scientific papers that I'm quoting. This isn't just talking to surveys of people. This has been traced in caregivers who of chronic caregiving, like serious caregiving, where the person has a need for 24/7 kind of needs, and 40 to 60% of dementia caregivers experience clinically significant stress. And the reason why we know it's specifically with caregiving is because there have been studies now showing what happens after. And guess what? The cortisol rates numbers go to the same. The inflammation goes away. You feel a little bit better. You may not need as much high blood pressure. One of the things that happened to me when I had Bruce in home for the longest time during that, we were in crisis, I would say, for about 18 months from his symptoms, and both of my knees gave out. And I ended up having to go for injections in my knees, and the orthopedic guy said, oh, we may need a knee replacement and your hip is shot, all this kind of stuff. I don't have a knee problem today because he's been in a home for 5 years. It was the stress and the inflammation that was causing me to not be able to walk. So that is another thing that I think about in caregiving, because, well, there's so much. I can tell you everything in one shot, but I have so much to talk about. It's stressful. It's not stressful, but you know what I mean. But so we've got all of these medical things happening to us. We've got a loved one that we're worried about. We got cortisol coursing through us. Your knees hurt. You're stressed. You're not sleeping because they're wandering around the house and you're terrified for them. And on top of all that, you got to go to work in the morning because your husband may have lost his job. Oh my gosh, imagine. So you're sitting at work and you're looking at the cameras that you've installed in your house because you're afraid that he's going to hurt the animals or he's going to burn down the house. And you are half there. It's called presenteeism. And then somebody comes and says, you know what, we'd like to train you for this role. We think you would make a really good director of this department. And you say no. Why? Because I don't know how I can look after my mom at the same time as looking after myself. So women take a sidestep out, and the figure to let you know in terms of what it looks like is, I'm sorry, I'm saying women a lot. It is mainly women who fall into the caregiver role. It doesn't mean that men don't. You do as well. So take the numbers as they are and include yourself if it's appropriate in the moment. But, on average, we provide 26 hours of care per week. That's a part-time job. Like that's a job at Walmart. That's a job at McDonald's or Dairy Queen in my case. And it's 5.7 billion hours of care, which is a $97 billion economic value, which is effectively unpaid labor that subsidizes our healthcare system. So that's my policy points. And that's why I think things really need to change in this country, because it's not getting any better. And for some reason, and I don't know, and I implore some scientific institution to please study this, there's a higher incidence of young-onset Alzheimer's, demonstrably so, in Canada than any other country in the world. And I don't know why, and I would love to know why. But I have no money to fund the research. But I will fund the research one day. I'll find it. But it's really noticeable. It's really noticeable. It's significantly higher, like magnitudes higher than any other country.
Thank you. And thanks so much for sharing the importance of the gender dimensions of dementia caregiving. And certainly we know that women are overrepresented, both as carers in the home, but also as paid care workers within, what are sometimes referred to as formal care spaces. At the same time, as you noted, it's important to be thinking about caregiving across, both men and women, and disrupting the gender binary. We do know that 30 to 40% actually of men are caregivers, but it's those same structures, that hegemonic masculinity, that can be just as detrimental to men as it can for women. And so we've heard through some of the research, men really not seeking help because they would say they don't know what to do. And the stigma piece is so big. And so people really, when you're caring for someone, and we also heard this around mental health, doing so much, I think, to normalize for the person that you're caring for, that you're holding up a mirror, but there's no reflection for yourself. So we've heard that in some of the research that we've done, that carers just don't get that support, and they were calling for mental health support for the person who they were supporting, so that they could also have it. It's kind of a double. I wonder, you talked about like the economic aspects of caregiving, and we could think about it at, in terms of hours of care. What about at the individual level? So out-of-pocket costs. So what is that impact? How did you experience it, or how do you see it in your advocacy work around caregiving when you talk to people?
Yeah. Well, let's start with the fact that I had a very good job. My husband had a very good job, and we're very fortunate. So I don't speak for the bulk of families that are dealing with this, quite frankly. And I can just give you anecdotes from the folks that I talk to in the area. The biggest danger, of course, is when the loved one loses their job without access to long-term disability, because when they're young, in young onset Alzheimer's, they're 55, 56, they got 10 more years of work. And probably the kids are, at that time, if you have children, they're probably just graduating from high school and they're going to be going into university. So that's a cost. I have met many, many women whose partners lost their job and they were the primary breadwinner and the kids were going to college. And it was just really tough on everybody. Absolutely devastating. One other thing, though, to note is a tip, or the biggest shocker for me was that the moment Bruce was diagnosed, his lawyer would not let him change his will or his power of attorney, because the diagnosis meant he could be challenged on whether or not Bruce was cognitively able to make a change in his will. Bruce had a first marriage, and as a result, he couldn't change the will. Now, I am in the will, but there's a lot of intricacies involved in that will that holds us to a lot higher account than I would say if it was just a normal situation where if he was diagnosed and he knew I was going to be looking after him forever, that he would have made different arrangements. Same thing with powers of attorney. Very important to have powers of attorney in place in any case of anything happening, and making sure that they withstand any kind of legal challenge if that's something that concerns you. So it's the cost associated with the loss of income. It's the cost associated with wanting to hire people to come into your home before the province tells you that it's time for people to come into your home. You get an occupational therapist who will come in and do an analysis of Bruce. Many times that happened, and they would just write and say, no, he seems to be self-sufficient. He's going to be okay by himself. The minute they walked out the door, Bruce was back to his old antics, and I knew that he could not be left alone. So it would be a combination of, as I said, putting cameras in place, asking relatives to come up and look after him, which was pretty traumatic for my mother when she came up because he was very aggressive. Hiring people to come into the house that you paid for on your own, which I could afford, but still, it's not an easy expense. And I know I'm on film, but I'm going to say it anyway. A lot of this, because of the fact that we don't pay caregivers a significant wage, a lot of them in Ontario wish to be paid under the table. And it's an underground economy, which makes it even worse because the caregiver who is hiring cannot apply taxes to it. You can't have any deductions. You can't prove that you have it. There's no receipts, but you're kind of jammed in that point. So that's the way you have to operate. And for Bruce, the difficulty was because he was so big and could be aggressive. I went through 6 people before I found one that would actually stick around and stay. And that's just and nobody wanted to stay overnight. Like no one was going to give you respite overnight, so you would just try to work during the day. So those kinds of things are the economic side of it. Yeah.
that access to care piece is so big and something that we struggle with, especially in rural communities. I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on the distinction between rural and more urban spaces? And as former Minister of Transport, transportation is one of those kind of key conduits, as well as can be a potential significant challenge to being able to access those services and supports, or have someone, whether it's under the table or someone who may be working with home care, be able to get to where you live.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So although I live in Ontario, I live in a rural part of Ontario. So it was difficult to get people to agree to come out to the country and you can probably understand that as well. Don't assume though that because you live in a big city, you're going to get better access to anything. It's hit and miss when it comes to Alzheimer's. There are some great stories out there about people getting wonderful access. And then there's more stories about how it comes too late and it's too infrequent. And it's funny, you mentioned men and women at the beginning. I will just give you my observation. The one thing that men are really, really, really good at, and that I'm very jealous of, is they figure out more quickly than women do the need to outsource, that they need help. They recognize that they need to bring help in, and they're not afraid. For some reason, women think we got to do it all ourselves because he wouldn't want this to happen. And that we've got to get over ourselves, because the one truism of this is whenever somebody asks, when did you know that you needed to put your husband in care, and what is your one regret? We will all say the one regret is that we didn't do it earlier because of the amount of care. When you see the difference in care, if you get a good place to see the difference in the care you can provide versus what they're getting, it's significant.
It's interesting also to think about this kind of cultural mythology that exists where we expect like that care will be there. So you're talking about being able to kind of go into care in the first place, but also it's been normalized, and the reality is it can be very challenging to get that placement, and could result in being hospitalized, as you said, maybe in an alternative level of care, and there for some time. There are so many challenges, and yet the title of your talk is A Different Kind of Love. Mm-hmm. I wonder, were there aspects of the dementia journey that you absolutely cherished?
Oh, yes. The minute he was diagnosed, we stopped fighting. We never fought again because I knew why he wasn't talking to me. I had so much more time and grace and empathy, because none of what we argued about was ever about being malicious or mean to one another, because he couldn't be malicious or mean. It really did. It ended right there. The whole thing. Trust me, I got frustrated. You're asked a million times a day the same question, and you gotta deal with that. I spent a lot of time watching a lot of videos about how to rein myself in. It's needed. You do. But vis-a-vis him, no. But the different kind of love, though, is it's no longer a romantic partner. And there is a change, and I still love him, and I always will love him, but it's different, and it's not maternal. I know people think, oh, you become it. No, I'm not his mother. It's not that at all. I'm definitely his wife, but it's just, it's a more encompassing kind of caregiving than, it's hard to put words around it, but it's definitely not the partnership that you once had. It is all one-sided. Bruce does not know who I am. He does not love me. He doesn't know who I am. However, I got enough for both of us, I suppose. And when I look at him, I think you know who I am, but I also think that he just likes the tall blonde lady who comes to visit him on occasion. Once a week, brings him Tim Hortons. I know my husband. But, I'll say to him, we're married. He'll go, no. Because in his mind, he's still young. Like, in the Alzheimer's mind, he may think he's like 11 years old or 12 years old. He may think he's really young. He may be he doesn't know he's a 66-year-old man. By the way, Bruce Wood was never happy about getting old. So when he turned 65, I took as many pictures with a cake that said 65 on it, because in the afterlife, he's going to come after me and say, Lisa, why did you do that to me? You know why? Because you hated getting old. But he isn't. His blood work, by the way, is better than anyone in this room. There's no stress in that man at all. He gets his 3 square meals a day and lots of entertainment and concerts and foot rubs, and all that good stuff. So, and you know, I joke about it, but so I miss the partner love isn't there, the romantic. He's gratitude, he's grateful. I'm grateful to him, but it is different and it's lonely. And that's the other side of the caregiver life, right? You're incredibly lonely, you're incredibly isolated, and you just don't know what to do. You're in this limbo. You know, somebody said, "Do you want to date?" No. Why? How do I explain this? Right? That's not going to happen. Some people do, and I'm not taking anything away from them. It's a difficult situation. So I work and I bother my children. That's basically what I do. In that order, work comes first.
That's excellent. Well, thank you. Thank you, Lisa. I can open it up to the floor. I'm sure you have so many questions here.
I hope so. Yeah,
I'm
go ahead.
So grateful for.
Otherwise, I'll just continue to tell stories. It does.
Grateful for everything you've shared. So we could just get started. If there are questions, I can come to you. This chair is too tall for me. So.
Oh, and I was feeling so comfortable. One of the things, as you're getting ready to put your hand up, please do. It's better when you ask questions. Don't be shy. One of the things that I did do was I needed to find support, right? Not in the room support. I needed to find my own support structure. And I looked in Canada, and I know that there may be folks here from the Alzheimer Society, so do not take this as any kind of criticism to you, but I really couldn't find what I needed in Canada. What I did find was a group called Hilarity for Charity in the United States, run by an actor called Seth Rogen and his wife Lauren Rogen. Her mom had young onset Alzheimer's. He raised a lot of money, a lot of money. One of the programs they have for caregivers is a every week therapy session, for lack of a better word, group session for people whose partners had Alzheimer's. So on Thursday nights between 6:30 and 9 o'clock, I would log on a call with people from California, Virginia, New York, Florida, and this was pre-Trump, by the way, so we didn't talk politics, but we would talk about where our spouse was in their journey and where we were. And boy, you can have honest conversations moderated by a social worker, all provided for free by Hilarity for Charity. If I could tell you that was one thing that got me through the crisis time with Bruce, it was that and that alone. And we do not have that in Canada. The best the Alzheimer's Society can do is once a month check-in. You need weekly. You need to have that lifeline knowing, okay, I got to get through the next 2 days and then I'll get on the group call and then it'll be okay. So it was significant. So when I'm asked about, you know, what kind of supports you'd like to have, I would like to have something like that. But if we don't have it in Canada, they accept Canadians into their program. I think I've personally referred 15 of them and they're all in the program now. So it's Hilarity for Charity. Look it up online. You have to apply to get in, but it's still... they kind of let everybody in, including Canadians, even now. Oh boy, is it a shy audience?
Questions from the floor?
Thank you, sir.
Excellent.
Great.
My wife, Marianne, started not behaving in a normal manner visually. She was not able to see. She couldn't find the phone to pick it up to answer it. And for about 4 years, we tried to resolve this visual problem. And then finally, I went to the ophthalmologist with her, and she was reading the eye chart better than I could, and I was sitting closer to it. So it obviously was not related to the eye itself. Finally, 2 years later, we got a diagnosis and she was diagnosed with posterior cortical atrophy, a very rare disease. I don't know if you've heard of it or not, Lisa. Marianne's doctor of 50 years had never heard of it. But anyway, the doctor told her to go home. My wife loved to walk, loved to meet people, see people, and she continued to do that. As a matter of fact, she got me walking. And then we used to go to the StFX hockey games. She couldn't see the puck, but she could meet people, and that was all very good. But as the disease progressed, she required more and more care. And it reached the stage where I could not leave her home alone. And we dealt with that for a few years. And finally, the Department of Community Services clued me in, and this is why I wanted to tell this story, because this program was very helpful to us. They have a program called Self-Directed Home Care. And what you do is, if you get approved, is you go out and you find somebody to provide home care. And that, of course, allows you to get some freedom and going. And it's, you hire the person, somebody you have confidence in. They provide, enough wage that you can supplement it if you wanted to. You don't want to pay somebody a bit more. So if anybody is interested, I would suggest they research that program. It's very good. Just so happens that the Minister of Health of the day did the initial test run of that.
Okay.
Not taking any credit, but anyway.
You're a pilot project.
So that was extremely helpful to us. And then the vision deteriorated, and she was unable to see, and I kept her at home for as long as I could with this help. But it's still at night, there was no sleep, as you would understand. She did not have Alzheimer's, but it was a disease of the brain. And there were certain elements of dementia that she had, but she was, she was able to make judgments. She was able to recognize people or grandchildren, carry on conversations, and that sort of thing. Talking about support for a caregiver, I was extremely fortunate in that a very good friend of mine, who was an even better friend of Mary Ann's, son's partner, was a geriatric psychiatrist. And I, in conversation with the mother, would converse with the geriatric psychiatrist, and I received all kinds of positive reinforcement. And that meant so much to me, meant so much to me. And I'll finish with a story speaking about the love that's there, even though it has changed. Mary Ann went into the nursing home right at the onset of COVID. So very restricted as to when I could visit her. And I was allowed to take her out for a drive on occasion. And this experience will stick with me. If I live to be 1,000 years old, I will never, ever forget it. Mary Ann was not 6'4", whatever your husband was. She was 4'11", and she was coming down the hall of the nursing home to meet me so I could take her for a drive. And she had a walker. She couldn't see, but the caregiver, and you're so correct about caregivers. We're so fortunate that we have people that will dedicate their lives to being caregivers. But the caregiver said to her, "Mary Ann, there he is. There's Angus." And at that, Marianne just took off with her little feet, running with her walker toward me. And that experience is something that I will never, ever, ever forget. To know that you could mean so much to another person is just an experience that's will carry me forever.
That's very true. And that's one of the gifts of caregiving.
Yes.
Is that you can get that sense. Thank you for sharing that. That was beautiful. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
So on the topic, while someone else puts up their hand, on the topic of love, when Bruce exhibited some really terrible behaviors and became violent, as some do. Not all Alzheimer's patients get violent, but he did, unfortunately. So we had to have him committed, for lack of a better word. We were able to get him into a psychiatric hospital at Baycrest. And he was there for about a year. And what they do is they wean you off of all your medications and then they try new ones to see. Bruce's problem was that he had hallucinations and he would see demons and he would see people who were threatening him and he would try to fight them. All the windows in my house, all the doors, all the reflective surfaces had to be covered with plastic or non-reflections. I said this morning, going to Costco was never fun. That place is full of reflective surfaces. I didn't realize how many freezers they had in Costco till we got stuck there one day. Trying to get out was not pleasant because he was fighting all the freezers, which is not easy for people to see. They don't understand it, and I can understand why they'd be afraid. But the reason why I tell you about Bruce he's in the hospital for a while, and I would visit him very frequently, but it was under secured conditions. I was the trigger that would cause him to be violent, which was really hard for me. So we would have to be supervised during that period of time. But here's the part of love. I love your story that she saw you and came running towards you, but it triggered me because my story is I'm walking down the hallway and I see my husband walking towards me holding someone else's hand. It's like, really? Really? Are we really going there? No, it's even better. Oh, just wait. My husband's 59 at the time. I'm barely 50. She's 79. And immediately I'm jealous. And I'm thinking, I can take her. I know I can. The Cape Breton came right out. Whitney Pier was on the floor, guys. And it was just that moment. So I was jealous. And I was like, I mean, when you think about it, I was insecure about it. But she was spending all her time with him. Anyway, that was his first romance in the home. He had another one, and then another one, and then another one. He was very popular, but it never went beyond. It never went beyond anything but hand holding and being close and wanting to have, at least that I know of. I don't know. I'm gonna hope so. I'll get him in the afterlife, as I said. We'll have a chat when that's over. I'm not dating, but he is. Explain that to me. I don't understand. So but I joke about it now, but it was emotionally really difficult to see that he had attached to somebody else. You do hear about it. And I hear some people say, oh, it's really nice to have someone in the home. I did not feel that whatsoever. I did not feel, oh, it's nice for Bruce to have someone. I did not feel that. I was very territorial. And then the nurses would tell me, oh, don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. And they just, they were all over him like flies on honey. Oh, or the other one. But yeah, thank you for getting my joke. Okay. So that was the not a great time. And the other thing that I found was funny but not funny was, man, he wanted to take his pants off all the time in the house. It was just walking around without the pants all the time and be like, can you please put some pants on? But just didn't want to. He would wear like 3 jackets, 2 hats, and underwear. And that would be the outfit for the day. And I may have taken some pictures. No, I never took pictures, of course. But it's just, I tell you that because it's absurd, but you live it. Like, it happens, and people should know that strange things can happen, for sure. Thank you, Will.
This started about a dozen years ago. And so in that time, I mean, I would say I've heard a lot more talk about dementia. I've heard a lot more talk about Alzheimer's. And you mentioned the stigma related to this. Have you seen a shift in this? Do you think that there is a shift now, or is it still residually always there so that people, can't bring themselves to talk about it? I mean,
Yeah.
I had a colleague at another university. He had dementia, and he worked at the university. He'd retired, but he would go around and he said, "Oh yeah, I've got dementia. I've got
Good for
Alzheimer's."
him.
And I thought, and they were entrusting the university history to him. So I thought, well, I mean, are you doing this as a kind of therapy or what's
Yeah.
going on? But no, I think he was open about it, and
Yeah.
and it was normalized.
Yeah.
And I think that people appreciated that. But my question is about the stigma. Have you seen a shift in this, or
I think the stigma is the same, but it's not the stigma you think. It's not people on the outside looking at the dementia patient thinking that they're not worthy. It's the family and the individual who get the diagnosis who don't want to share it with anybody because they're worried they're going to be thought of as inferior. It's backwards. I don't think society at all blames people or looks down on them when they have dementia or Alzheimer's. I think that in some cases, though, they take advantage of them, which is another part of our society. But I don't think that people look unkindly on Bruce or think, oh, he deserved it. That never happens. But I can tell you, I am very much on the other end of the phone for a lot of people, like at least 10. They'll call and say to me, my husband just got diagnosed, my wife just got diagnosed, but we're not telling work. I can't tell my friends. I don't want to tell anybody. Right at the beginning, they don't want to tell anybody. There's a point where you have to tell. But I will share with you as well, it's tough to be friends with a couple with dementia. It's really tough. You lose friends. You know who your friends are. Because other people, it's not stigma, they're just uncomfortable. They just don't know what to say. They don't want to do. Everything is different. So they just kind of drift away. And the couple with the dementia, they don't do anything at all to try to keep people with you because you feel guilty about it. And you understand, why would you want to be around that? So you really rely upon family an awful lot. It's, like I said, isolation. Big danger when it comes to caregiving because you don't want to burden anybody. I had a lovely gentleman who worked on my campaigns, and he big heart, and he wanted to take Bruce for a drive. And he came up to take him for a drive, and it went really south really quick. And then that was it. He never tried again. And then I think he felt so bad about it that it resorted in terms of just asking how Bruce is. There is very few members of my family who have seen Bruce since he's been hospitalized. Even though they come and visit me, they don't ask to go and see him. It's just tough. It's just tough to see. My sister Coralie did. She came. And it surprised me because I thought, you really want to see him? Oh, okay, well, let's go. And it was nice. It felt normal. But you just become very desensitized to them, it just being you and them and living in that kind of world. So I think everybody knows about it. Everyone's afraid of getting it. No question about it. Everybody in this room probably has a connection to Alzheimer's in some kind of way. But, there has to be a difference in treatment. There is going to be a difference in treatment. And I'm not blaming caregivers for it because we've got enough going on at any given time. But our instinct is to become very inward and protect ourselves and protect our loved one. So it's not a stigma, it's a protection mechanism. And I think people are kind and generous and would like to come over and help you. But I've not had anybody stay at my house in the whole time Bruce was in the house and sick. We didn't have people over. And I stopped having dinners with neighbors. Like it was just, didn't know what he was going to do. It's not a stigma. It just, the uncertainty of what would happen.
I wonder if I could follow up on that, if you'd mind, Lisa.
I don't mind at all.
I want a question that just occurred to me is we know that we have this new legislation at the federal level and also the provincial level. So there's the Accessible Canada Act and then various provincial laws related to accessibility. Do you think there's any hope there in shifting the culture on dementia? There's been awareness campaigns that have mobilized evidence from research, shifting again, like away from mythologies of dementia that might overemphasize memory problems at the expense of recognizing the diversity of changes that may occur. Do you think that there's anything within like our political, public policy, legal structure that can help us kind of change the current or change the course?
Excellent question. I don't know if it's regulatory in nature. I think one of the things that would have been most helpful, it's a program from the Alzheimer's Society, and I think it's the Blue Butterfly program. Has anyone ever heard of the Blue Butterfly program? It's where companies, small companies, get training to deal with dementia patients and Alzheimer's patients, and they put a butterfly in their front window so it's a safe place for them to go to. And I would patron that store every day, all the time, if they had an understanding of what my husband was like. When you're starting to lose your skills, daily skills, adult ADLs, I forget what it's called. Someone in the room must know. Thank you. I knew someone smart was here. When you start losing those, what happened to Bruce was he would double down on practicing it. So we went through a period of time where he made 36 coffees a day in the Nespresso machine because he was afraid of forgetting how to make Nespresso. That's a lot of coffee, guys. And then he displayed all the capsules on the table. And we took a picture. And my kids went, "What is going on?" But he was also talking to the men in the reflections at the time. So he was making coffee for the boys who were working in the yard. And then he asked me if I could get them jobs. No. I was afraid he was going to ask me if they could get EI, because that would be a whole other thing. That would be a big problem, filling that out. But when they start losing their ability. So one of the things Bruce fixated on was he loved sunglasses. And he would go and buy sunglasses every day. And we're not talking Walmart sunglasses, folks. We're talking the $200, $300 sunglasses. He would walk into stores and do it. And one day, I just kind of rolled my eyes and tried to monitor as much as I can. But one day, I got really ticked off because he bought the same sunglasses 2 days in a row from the same person at the same place. And I went in, and it was a young lady. And I just said, "Look, he has Alzheimer's. You should have known that. He can barely speak. You probably had to help him use his credit card." And she said, "Yeah, we had to show him where to put it." And I said, "Look, you can't do that. Like you gotta turn it away." And she learned a lesson that day. She wasn't upset. She wasn't belligerent or anything, but I hope it was a teachable moment. But that kind of stuff drove me bananas. And the worst culprit, and I work for one, is the bank. So Bruce also liked taking cash out, like big stacks of cash. Then he would hide in the house, which you're familiar with this. Big stacks of cash, hide in the house, never found again. Like I'm waiting to open a wall one day when I'm renovating and finding the missing money that I still can't figure out where it's gone. Other couples that I know, the husband didn't go for the cash, but went to friends and took out loans and signed promissory notes, and she ended up getting all the loans, and the surprise of the mortgage when she ended up sorting out his affairs. It was terrifying. My husband didn't file taxes for 3 years. That was fun. I'm a minister of the Crown fighting with Revenue Canada because my husband's a tax dodger, and they're saying, "Well, prove he has Alzheimer's." I said, "Come on in the house. Like you're going to have a conversation. It'll be apparent to you fairly soon." But I think education of people writ large of how to work in commercial settings, especially those kinds of shops, a bank. I had to go to the bank eventually, and then you can't take his card away because that's not legal. It's his bank account. He can take out what he can, but I could limit how much he could take out. So I dropped the limit to like $100 or something like that, but he could go in every hour and get $100. He didn't clue into that, thank goodness. But we stopped the major withdrawals. I think at one point I was scared that FinTrack was thinking that we were money laundering. There was so much money going out one day and then back in the next day because I found the stash in the house. But those are the kinds of things that I would say. I also think I like the idea of on the caregiving side of having that self-directed. They do that in the United States. and it allows somebody to employ a family member a lot of the cases to be able to do that. I think that makes sense. You got to monitor it and police it properly, but I think that can work. And that gets you above the table as opposed to below the table in a lot of caregiving. I think tax breaks are nice to talk about, but the reality is you don't make enough money for the tax break to mean anything. So services. And then the last thing, and I talked about this afternoon with another group, I think employers in large corporations should ensure as part of their employee benefits that there is caregiving respite, there's caregiving Sherpaing or helping person figure out what they needed to do for a loved one with Alzheimer's. Like we have daycare. It's not daycare, but really an acknowledgement in society that 1 in 4 of us are going to get dementia. You have a greater propensity if you're a woman over 60 to get Alzheimer's than you do breast cancer. And I don't know if that number is well understood or well known. So having, in your long-term disability or in your employee benefits, the ability to tap into something that's going to be helpful like that, I think that's another societal way of dealing with it, quite frankly. Trust me, the government doesn't have all the answers. And the government is a blunt instrument in terms of how to apply these things, and oftentimes they get it wrong. And then the last way is, I think, supporting grassroots, community-founded organizations that are providing the help and giving them the funding. I think that's the way to do it. And those people who do that are saints.
That's great. Okay, a few questions. Thank you.
Thank you. A bit of director's prerogative here. When Bruce was diagnosed, your boys were fairly young.
Yeah.
How did that affect mothering? They're at a time when I know it must have been, it's one thing to talk about a sandwich generation when you've got parents and children, but when it's your partner and children, it must be a very difficult road to kind of navigate.
So I'm allowed to talk about this. The boys have given me permission. So we'll get that started before I get the angry letters. So JC was 16, Billy was 13. Bruce probably saw Billy as a threat to him in the house and was really hard on him. And as a result, I don't know what the impact is on Billy, but Billy ended up founding a charity called Alzheimer Strong, designed a logo that was Bruce, and printed out T-shirts and sweatshirts and sold them and donated like $5,000 to Alzheimer's societies around Canada. So he reacted to it okay, I guess I could say. His dream in life was to create a shoe that would be good for Alzheimer's patients that didn't look like a shoe for, an elderly person that Bruce could wear, but it would help him because he couldn't tie his shoes anymore. And he didn't have great balance. And of course, we would hide a tag in there to make sure that if he wandered off, we would know where he was. I mean, that's how Billy coped. He thought about ways in which he could solve the problems that he was surrounded with. Billy also, though, turned to fitness and bodybuilding because he was very small. I'm not going to say small. Sorry, Billy, you were not small. You were young. Not small. But when Bruce became aggressive, and Billy had to protect himself in a way. So, you react to these kinds of things. JC went to university, and I know his choice of university was impacted by the fact he didn't want to be far away from me in case. And on the last night of his first year of university, he's sitting on the couch with me, and Bruce was very aggressive that night, and he threw a punch at me, and JC stopped it in midair. And I thought, you're in first year university. It's your last night of exams. Why are you sitting with your mom on a couch? Like, you should be, trust me, at StFX, I was not doing that, my friends. I was at the tavern, no question about it. But he wasn't. So I think it did change. They're both very mature, and they're both very responsible. But we'd have to ask them how they felt about it. For me, full honesty and disclosure, I worry that I let Bruce stay in the house longer than he should have, and I think I tempted fate on putting them in danger. It's okay if I put myself in danger, but the minute it became apparent to me that Billy was in real danger, that's what caused me to call 911 and have my husband removed and not come back home again. And that was the tough decision. So that's the kids. JC has done something like this with me in public, and I think, he's very good at it. They talk about it. They care deeply about the impact on younger people, because that is the part of society no one understands. What happens to the kids of young onset Alzheimer's? No one to talk to. No one to talk to. There is a group, there's a house in Chicago called Lorenzo's Place, and it was built by a family who the dad had Alzheimer's and they had younger kids, and they recognized they needed more support for their kids, and they built a place. So one in the United States, imagine that population. And we have nothing like that in Canada. And the resources online are okay. But when Baycrest calls and says, can you help us out on care when it comes to young people, they'll help, and they'll give their advice. So unfortunately, Linda, it's the family business. That's what it's become. And I'm proud of them for not wanting to. I'm proud of them for wanting to talk about it instead of just internalizing it and ignoring it, because that happens in a lot of families. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry, Billy and JC. Hope that's okay.
Lisa, just to follow up on that, I think it's something like.
Oh, there you are. I was scanning the room going, where's the voice?
I think it's something like over 1 million young people aged 15 to 30 are young caregivers.
Sorry, I just got to make sure it's not Baycrest, and it's not. Let me just turn it off. I had to wait. It's always on call, folks. You never know. Twice a day I get reports on how he is, and it's not Baycrest, so we're okay. It's somebody from Ottawa, and I'm going to hang up because they're listening to me right now. Okay. It's not the Prime Minister. That comes up Prime Minister, so he's not calling me.
I'm just wondering if you have like a word of wisdom or like a message for young Lisa that was the StFX student. We have some students in the back of the room, and so they don't know what the future will bring. Do you have any advice for our students?
Always buy disability insurance. Not a joke. Wish I did it. Always buy disability. You just don't know it's cheap when you're young, and you just don't know what's going to come at you. And when you need it, if it's there, it changes your life. The second thing that I would say is, although the older person, so let's pretend it's your grandmother who has Alzheimer's and your mom is looking after them. Your mom is going to want to try to protect you from having to do anything and pretend that everything is okay. Ignore her and try to help as best you can. Bring her a coffee. Be nice to her, drive her somewhere. You don't have to go in and sit with grandma necessarily if you're uncomfortable doing that, but you can help your mom or you can help your dad by doing something kind. Go to the grocery store for her. Get good marks, of course. That's always important. But those would be the kinds of things. And still be the kid, because we need the kids to be the kids so that we have something else to live for. Loved going to my kids' basketball games. Loved it. And hockey and everything else. It was a way to forget about what was going on. So that's, and talk. And if you're uncomfortable, find somebody to talk outside the house. Like talk. Find a group. Best you can.
Thank you. Others? Okay. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Heather Hain. My husband's 73, and he was diagnosed at least 5 years ago as school teacher. Yep. Very involved with everything and everybody. We have 2 sons. We have 4 grandchildren, and they're great with me and my daughter-in-laws as well. Derek is really a good patient. Not saying when that's going to change, but we'll deal with that when it comes. He's very particular about things, like everything has to be just so. Yes. Yep. But he's, we live at the Maples, at the townhouses up here, and it's the best move that I ever made. I left my home in a little community in Country Harbor 5 years ago, and we came to town, and it's awesome for him because tonight he's at cards. He plays crib, and he has his caregiver with him. I have somebody comes in twice a week for 3 hours. It's not a lot, but it's plenty for me right now. And she's great. If I want to go somewhere, she will come in. And she doesn't play cards, but she went with him tonight because he wanted to go. He would have rather been here, but he wasn't coming here.
That's okay. That's okay.
But anyway, and yeah, like we play cards all the time. He has a grandson that started playing the guitar, and Derek played the guitar all his life. And his little grandson's away playing hockey, and he comes home and he always comes down. And the first place he goes is in the bedroom to get Puppy's guitar because he doesn't bring his home.
Yeah.
And Derek had 2 guitars. And every day he says, boys, you know, somebody came in the house and stole that old guitar, and I don't know who it was. Well, we gave it to our grandson.
Yeah.
But he just has a hard time with that.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's a good eater. He's a good sleeper. He's clean. He gets on my nerves. Guaranteed 24/7.
Yes.
You know, and like you said about asking same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah.
He is my husband.
Exactly. And I'm glad you're in a really good place, and I wish you long time in that
I hope
place.
so.
You know.
Yeah, and we've been married 52 years, so not going to change it now.
Congratulations. I'm glad you got the support, and I just remember, be prepared for things to happen before they happen. That's all. When I asked for a lot of advice when Bruce started to act out, stark for, maybe there's somebody in the room who needs the advice, but one doctor said to me, your car has to have a full tank of gas in it, and you got to have car keys with you at all times in case you need to get out. And it turned out to be true. And at one point I had to remove all the knives in our house and give them to my next door neighbor. So we were using spoons and forks for a while, but just couldn't be trusted. Didn't quite know what was going to happen in that time. And I never expected it. And I'm saying it out. It's not going to happen to you. I promise you, but don't be surprised. Like, don't fluff anything off. And I hope you don't end up with, the one that annoyed me the most was when he was forgetting how to do laundry. So he really forgot how to do laundry. He loved doing laundry because of the process. He was a process guy. But man, he started nailing nails in the walls in our house and hanging up towels that were half washed and half dried. It was wild. And we would just walk through the house going, oh, well, okay, this is what we're dealing with today. You don't get upset. You just kind of go, okay, this is our life. It's not easy, no, but oddly enough, my house insurance did cover the damage that he had made when he had Alzheimer's in the house. So there were some holes in the walls, there was some stuff like that, banging doors too hard, and the obvious nails. And yeah, they covered damages, which really surprised me. It was my agent who said you can claim this under your damages. So there you go. I hope you don't have that problem. Young person at the back.
So when you first got the diagnosis and through the early stages, you were still in public life and in politics.
I was.
What was the response from your colleagues and the media as well? Do you think that added an extra layer of stress to the situation given you were in public life and had those responsibilities?
Thank you for asking that. I should have said, y'all can ask me questions about politics too. I'll answer those as well. I'm happy. You got me for 2 hours. You might as well use me. So thank you for the question. Bruce was diagnosed in 2016. We had lost government at the time. I was in opposition. I was the finance critic, and I ran for leader because why not, right? Why did I run for leader? I ran for leader because I wanted to run for leader, and I was determined not to let his diagnosis stop me. Right. That was a nice theory. As we went through the very long campaign, it went on for an interminable amount of time, like 9 months or so. Bruce got sicker and sicker, and I wanted to spend more and more time with him. And I had 1 foot in the campaign and 1 foot out of the campaign. And the lesson in politics is either you're all in or you're not in at all. And that's what I learned. So what I learned from the experience of running for the leadership is I came to the conclusion at the end, I had to leave politics. And I was getting ready to leave in 2017. And I was going to tell Andrew Scheer I was leaving. And he called me instead and said, can you be the deputy leader? And I said, boss, I was just about to tell you I'm quitting. And he said, what do I need to do in order to make it easier for you to come back to Parliament? Because I really need you there. And I said, I need a flexible schedule so that I can fly up on Tuesday morning and I can go back on Wednesday night after question period. And I can't do any committees. You can use me when you need to use me, and I'll do questions in the house. But beyond that, no travel and nothing else. And he said, yeah, sure, done. No problem. And that's how I was able to function for the next 2 years. You never would have known it because I was on everybody's television all the time, right? I hid it well. But you know who knew it? My constituents. And on Saturday nights, when I would normally go to 3 or 4 constituency events, I would say to myself, I have a handful of nights with my husband while he's still able enough to go to a movie with me. Am I going to go to the community event or am I going to go out with him? The answer is easy. So I just stopped doing community events. And the Liberals figured it out. They're very smart. And they're very clever. They did a really good job getting rid of me. And then they felt guilty and offered me a job, which was really funny. And I said no. But they found a candidate, Adam Van Couverden, extremely popular, well-respected Olympian. And he spent 2 years going to the events that I didn't go to. And when it came down to the election, I ran again. I don't know why I ran again, but they asked and I said yes. I knew I was going to lose. And they would say at the door, well, we saw him, we didn't see you. Like, politics is local. You got to show up. You got to be part. So that is what happened in terms of, was it a conscious decision I made to, lose my riding? Looking back, maybe. But the reality is that you couldn't do both at the same time. So when we lost in 19, I needed to find a job. 6-month severance is ticking away in your mind. Had a couple of interviews, got the interview with CIBC, and it was in November, I'm going to say, of 2019, just before we got into COVID. And I said to the guy, I'm going to be upfront with you. My husband has Alzheimer's. He's got a rough spot today. We're going to have an interview he interviewed me he was on his way somewhere. So he interviewed me at the Sheraton Hotel in the Toronto airport. And I said, I'm bringing my husband to my interview. Might as well know this is what I'm like now. He's going to sit at the table over there. He'll be fine. But we'll talk here. He'll sit over there. And the banker said, yeah, okay. I don't think he had any choice, but he had a parent who had Alzheimer's, so he kind of understood. But from the beginning at CIBC, I was extremely upfront that this is what Bruce's symptoms were really, really bad during COVID, 20 to 21. It was, like I said, 18 months from mid-19 all the way through to beginning of 21 was the tough time. And we were home because of COVID, so I was in the house. And nobody really knew what we were going to do to work. So I lucked out on timing and I was able to keep the job. My job now is heavy travel, and that's what it would have been from the beginning. But for COVID, I probably I wouldn't have my job I have today because I just couldn't do it. I would have been one of the statistics I told you about at the front. So that's, I guess that's the story of leadership versus, and if you want to ask me, will I ever go back to politics? The answer is simple. As long as I have caregiving responsibilities, I will never give undivided attention to the constituents that I serve. Therefore, the answer is no, because you got to be able to do that in order to win their trust. And plus, my party's not winning right now, so why would I go back? That's a bad joke, but it's actually true. So I hope that answered your question. Thanks. Okay, who's next? Yes, ma'am, go ahead. We're making you run. Oh, the lady over here first, and then we'll come back to you. Thanks. Do you guys remember Phil Donahue? This was like Phil Donahue running through the audience.
Thank you. I'm a caregiver, and what I'm gleaning from your talk today is that I need to tell my father I need to go to the spa every month.
Yep. You do.
I'm actually, seriously, I'd like to know what you did for self-care, how you took care of yourself.
I didn't, though. I told you I worked and I bother my kids. I really didn't do the self-care. And now I find myself having to do physiotherapy for my hips and my knees because I didn't exercise for the longest time. I really didn't do self-care. And that's a me problem. That's not a you problem. I prioritized everything else. But if I could give any word of advice, my God, get out there and just walk or go to the spa or whatever. Like, do that for sure, because it just makes you feel so much better. I think my therapy now is this. I think talking about it in public is actually beneficial for me, but I wish I did more on that part of it. And it's not like, I'm not proud of that at all. I think it's not a good example. So if you can, like, get out and take a walk, I think it's amazing. And it keeps dementia away.
Thank you.
And yes, tell them you're going to the spa once, for sure. Absolutely.
Back down the line here. Excuse me.
Hi. My question is about my father.
Yep.
He is fiercely protective of his autonomy.
Yes.
So how do I balance wanting to advocate for him without making him feel like a child?
Such a good question. When Bruce, so the answer is carefully, but persistently. So you're not always going to be successful, but you have to continue to try. And for me, Bruce, I tried to get him into a day program to converse with people like him. It was at the University of Guelph. It was a disaster. I brought him in and he looked around. He said, I'm not a baby. I don't need to be here. And he didn't see himself in any of the people around him. It's really hard to make people do what they don't want to do. He didn't want to have a caregiver at first. That's why I had such a hard time keeping them. Wanted to do everything on his own and was so upset that he couldn't do it anymore. There is a turning point, though. Does your loved one still know that they have Alzheimer's? Yeah.
And it was like
It's a shock.
All the red flags were going up, and like, I'm moving home in September to take care of him. So I'm kind of like trying to figure out a plan now.
Yeah, it's a good thing to do. So persistence and gentleness. There is a woman called PETA, P-E-E-T-A. Can't remember her last. Thank you. That's it. Teepa Snow. PETA is the one from Hunger Games. Yeah, don't go there. PETA is the baker from Hunger Games. But so Teepa Snow, watch her videos. I think she's very good at those kinds of things and helping you understand. Gentleness, persistence, though. Like, don't give up, and then walk away when you need to walk away. You cannot tell a dementia patient what to do. You cannot. You have to work their system. You got to go inside their world to help, and you learn the lesson. And then, yeah. But good for you for helping out. Yeah, good luck. You're welcome. And thank you for the Teepa Snow. That's really embarrassing. PETA. Oh my gosh. Okay. Anybody else have a question? Politics or life or? Does anybody know what Trump announced at 5:30? I've been sitting here talking to you guys. No one? Has he declared victory? He was doing a press conference at 5:30 or 6:30. He declared victory? Fantastic. Fantastic. It means 6 more weeks of me being on TV.
My mother's has had dementia. She's probably been diagnosed since the last 3.5 years. She's in a home. They're great. But how'd you deal with when Bruce didn't know you anymore? Because when I go in there, it's always in the back of my mind.
It is, even when I go see him now, there are 2 emotions that go through my mind. One is how sad I am that I lost him. And the other is how mad he would be if he knew he had this disease. And that really, like, I feel so bad for him, because it's not the life that he wanted to have at all. It's not a bad life. It's a good life, but it's not the one that he wanted. So what do? I cry. Like, honestly, I get emotional about it, and I try to work it through, and you can only deal with what you recognize. And I know I said that he doesn't know me. Sometimes he does. Sometimes you can see it in the back. I have to believe that there's muscle memory in there of recognition. And like you mentioned, the gentleman mentioned before, maybe you'll have that clarity moment where you'll be able to hold on to it. I will caution you, though, when my husband has moments of clarity, and they do happen, because sometimes those synapses, I'm being technical and the brain surgeons in the room are going to be very mad at me, but sometimes stuff connects. When it connects for him,
We're not there.
he cries all day.
Yeah, we're not there yet, so I'll just take the good, right?
I'm sorry?
We're not there yet, so I'll take the good days.
Yeah, absolutely. And it may not happen.
Yeah, it may not happen. Yeah.
It may not happen. They may, it's a different kind of dementia.
Yeah.
But like I said, when Bruce has full memory, he cries all day because he knows he has this disease. So in my world, I would rather him not know me and me suffer than him know he has this and him suffer. So
Thanks.
You're welcome. I'm sorry. I'm glad you have good care for her, though. That's a good thing. You guys are doing good. I thought there would be like dead air. You're asking good questions.
Hi. My grandma had Alzheimer's and her mom had it too. So I feel like I have a good possibility of having it sometime. My question is, other than the disability insurance you recommended and the taking care of the will thing, what other things could be taken care of in advance to try to alleviate the pressure and impact on the family caregivers?
Okay, let's start with the first part of your question, which is you're worried about yourself. Dementia can be prevented. Okay, that kind of dementia can be prevented. My husband has a kind of dementia that's just bad luck. It's not genetic. It's like getting a terrible cancer. It's just bad luck. Dementia in general, eat a Mediterranean diet, get your exercise, do brain health kind of things, try to keep low stress. You can stave it off. It is not a foregone conclusion just because it's in your family that you're going to get dementia at all. Not at all. So go on the Baycrest website or go on some website that's associated with Alzheimer's, and they will tell you that dementia is, I can't say beatable because that's too far a claim, but we're getting there. We're getting there. And I think we're at the beginning of knowing how to treat it appropriately and maybe even get a cure for it one day. So you're too young to worry about that. Don't worry about it. If you worry about it, it's going to be bad. Don't worry. Think about it. And maybe mitigate how you live your life, but don't worry about it. But in terms of being prepared for caregiving, so let's say that I'm worried about getting dementia myself, right? What are the things that I do? And part of it, I make sure my powers of attorney are inappropriate. One son has health, the other one has money. The one who has the health is the one who will not unplug me to charge his phone. I told this joke earlier, Amanda. I know you heard it. I wish it was a joke. But how do you live your life with that? Well, you live your life. You still live your life. And you don't assume it's going to happen, but knowing that, as I said, keeping an active social life, keeping your brain active, playing a musical instrument, golfing, those kinds of things all matter. A good diet, exercise, not smoking, not too much alcohol, all the things that you're told to do actually do matter in terms of dementia. Sugar, now I'm really off on the beam. I am not a physician. Do not take this as medical advice. Full disclaimer, I think sugar's a problem. If I were to think that if there's anything that I can pinpoint in my husband's life, it's sugar as being something that is a contributor to his moods, to his decline. That would be it. So you can look that up online too. Some people refer to Alzheimer's as type 3 diabetes. It's something that they talk about in the literature too, and it could be. So all to be said, there is more work than ever, as pointed out, being done in the field, and everyone is very focused on making sure it doesn't happen. So you're going to be fine.
Thank you.
And I will give you that guarantee because I won't be around when you encounter it. But I give you permission to feel good about it. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to thank you for just being so vulnerable and giving us all permission to do that. I mean, it's you're such a high profile figure, and to speak with the honesty and from your heart and the pain, and that's something that we don't do very well in our society. I mean, we talk about men not doing that, masculinity, but I think all of us really feel that we to be strong, you need to not show everything you've shown tonight by what you've done. So thank you so much for modeling that to us. I think it's important.
very impressive.
I was asked earlier today about how I cope with it, and my response was, I don't talk about that, which is true. What you heard tonight was me telling you facts, stories. I never told you how I felt about it necessarily. And that's the part that I have to figure out and deal with, because I don't know. I'm in perpetual grief. It's, you know, he's my husband and I'm going to be a widow, but I'm already a widow and I don't know how to handle it and I don't know what to say or do or deal. And, you know, I spent all of my 50s looking after him, and it definitely was not my plan. I go on vacation and I see happy couples and I think, oh, that's not going to happen for me. You know, I'm not going to have 52 years. Congratulations. It's amazing and beautiful. Not my lot in life, unless I live to 150 and I find someone new, but that wrong on both counts. But those are the things that, you know, that's the root, that's the emotionality of the caregiver. The caregiver keeps himself busy with the daily tasks and then doesn't reflect upon the emotional side of it. So thank you for bringing that up. And I'm glad I got through that without crying. So but it does bubble up, right? I bragging for a second, I was inducted into the Milton Walk of Fame 2 weeks ago, which was really nice. Thank you, Milton, Ontario. Only because people always want to step all over politicians, and now they can literally do it on the sidewalk. But I got up and I was thanking the people of Milton for giving me the opportunity to serve them. And then I decided I'm going to mention Bruce because, you know, Bruce was a big part of it. Started to bawl in the moment, couldn't contain myself. And it's embarrassing, right? I talk for a living. I don't want to be, but I caught myself and I just, in the moment, sometimes it comes out of nowhere. What they call it, anticipatory grief. He's still here, but he's not. And I don't know what happens after he passes away, and I don't know what it looks like or what it doesn't look like. Right now, my life is getting reports twice daily on, well, whether or not he's had a bowel movement, how much he's eaten at lunch, whether or not he went to a concert, how is he feeling, is his mood good, twice a day. Every day, twice a day, I'm reminded of him, and that's part of my life. I don't know what happens after that's over. I know I can't work anymore because God knows I work too much now, but I'll have to figure out what's going to fill that part of my life, other than hopefully grandchildren, which the boys are not seeming to be on my plan right now on that, but we'll get them there. There's no choice. It's nature, as I say to them. Do we have another question on this side?
Yes, I have the mic. I just want to say thank you to the lady that just asked that question. You stole my thunder. Thank you for that. No, I just really wanted to say that what a privilege it is to hear somebody in such a visible position be so vulnerable. And what's really jumped out at me tonight, and before I say this, I will say I'm from the UK and I was a caregiver for my grandma when I was 8 years old, and it stayed with me to the point that I work with the Alzheimer Society in a whole different country now, because the stuff that I saw exists in Nova Scotia today, and that hurts my heart. But what I really like about this evening's session, and it's not a question, it's just a comment, is things are so bad and things are so under-resourced that it's often just about provision of care. And I think what we've really touched on tonight is the real human side of this disease and what it does to people. And to hear you say things like you're upset when you heard about your husband's girlfriend in the nursing home.
Girlfriends,
yes. But there's so little space for that because everything's about the provision of care and being there and showing up, that we forget that there are very real, you know, people have intimacy and sex lives and emotions and love. And it's just so lovely to hear the space made for this kind of thing tonight, because when the healthcare system is condensed like it is, it just becomes about the provision of care. And I just think it's so important to maintain the human connection to this disease. And thank you for that. And thank you for those that have shared their own experiences, because how often do you get to do that? Just talk about what's going on in your life and with your person. So thank you. Really appreciate it.
You're very kind. And I will tell you that the UK is like decades ahead of us. without a question. When I first started to try to learn about what was going on with Bruce, that's where I went to, als.co.uk. And I was on their message boards all the time, just putting in those keywords, trying to understand what was going on, self-diagnosing. That was before TikTok. Now everything's, Google. I follow people who are documenting on TikTok their journeys with their loved ones. And I find that instructive because you gotta be able to see it. But you put your finger on something no one talks about. You mentioned it, so I'm going to bring it up. And that is the whole notion of intimacy and consent. And that is something that is one step too far for a bunch of people to talk about, but it is a very big societal issue that people in relationships don't talk about. And it's a huge matter. And don't even ask me to try to figure that out. I can't, but no one talks about it. No one's comfortable talking about it, but you brought it up. So good for you. And people should know that is I don't know. It's the one part that no one's comfortable talking about, but it causes a lot of the problems in the relationships in a big way. Different kind of love, right? Different kind of love. Wow. Who knew we were going to end up on that in Antigonish, Nova Scotia? Thank goodness the bishop isn't here. I'd be blushing.
So one of the things that you mentioned was maybe a bit of a regret of when you put Bruce into a home and the other people you've spoken to. But then they also say keeping the loved one in their own home is a good thing. So how do you navigate, like, if you're saying you should do it earlier than you maybe thought or anticipated? Yeah. The comfort of their own home and surroundings and all of that play a part.
It's not a hard line. It's not a difficult line. It's if you're in immediate danger or your health can't handle it. You got to look after yourself. So if you're the caregiver and your loved one isn't violent at all, but you're not sleeping at night and you think you're going to have a real problem with your health, you do have to either bring someone in to help you through it or you have to think about it. And here's a story that I was told at the very beginning of his journey. It was 2017, after I came out and we talked about it. An old friend of mine from graduate school, his name was Tim Jackson, he called me and he said, I want to have coffee. And I went, why do you want to have coffee with me? Like, you're a liberal and I just lost. And are you calling me to gloat? I mean, it's bad enough. And he said, no, I want to have coffee and catch up. I said, okay, great. So we go for coffee and we're chit-chatting university. And then he says, listen, I called you because my mom had young-onset Alzheimer's. I went, oh, okay. Well, I appreciate hearing that. And he said, I need you to hear about my family. And I said, okay. So he said his dad was an accountant downtown Toronto. He looked after his mother for the whole time that she had young onset Alzheimer's. He decided he was going to retire, like a lot of people do. And they also decided that she was going to go into full-time care because she was up all night wandering around. It was hurting his health. He was older. He wasn't young. He was like in his early 60s, mid 60s. So they set it all up, Tim said, and they were really happy that he had made a decision because Tim and his brother were having a hard time convincing him. We know the story. The kids want to convince the dad to do this or the mom to do it. So he makes a decision. He gets on the train from Waterloo. He goes into Toronto to do to pick up his stuff for his last day. And you know where the story is going. He had a heart attack at Union Station and he died. And he told me that his dad let it go too long and that the signs were there. And as sons, they thought, what could we have done more to protect him? So he took it upon himself to try to protect me, that I wouldn't try to run myself into the ground, doing exactly the same thing that he watched his dad do. So I offer that story to the room when I talk about the statistics on 63% higher incidence of death as a caregiver than a normal person. I'm not shitting you. It is real. And that is something that the caregiver is not going to recognize right away, but the loved ones around, they're going to recognize it. If the caregiver's not eating, if they're losing weight, if they're not sleeping, God, sleep is the worst, right? When you're losing the sleep, you cannot function. It just goes all downhill from there. So those are the things that I would look for. And of course, violence in the home is not acceptable, and you've got to figure that out. And you do have to call the police and you have to get involvement because no one else is coming to save you. You can only save yourself. Harsh lesson to end on. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. Fantastic presentation. Thank you for everything. I'm wondering, for people, there are a lot of people who live rurally in our area, and maybe without a lot of social intervention to begin with, and older. We're a definitely graying population in rural Nova Scotia. What for people who don't have access to resources the way that many do, or that you have, intellectual resources, financial resources, how can we help them? What advice, what resources can we offer to them? Like, some people in this area don't even have internet, and so we can't say go to this website, go to that. So, like, what do we do to help our fellow community members who we might know or suspect that something's off, or just if someone is themselves asking for help, like what resources are there?
So resources is a tough question, because that gets into the adequacy of respite, whether or not you get it. But if we're talking about what can you do as a good Canadian citizen, gather up a couple of friends and go to the person's house and have a coffee with them. That's it. Like, just get, and they may be really nervous while their loved one may be wandering around, but you don't care that they're wandering around. Everything is going to be fine. And don't make it a burden for them. You're bringing everything. You're bringing the Tim Hortons, you're bringing the coffee, the cream, the cups, the treats, everything. And all they have to do, if they have to walk around and look after the person, that's fine. But you're in the house, you've broken up their day, and they're not just looking at their loved one and their care responsibilities. And that would be my best advice. Be a good neighbor. That's it. Just be a good neighbor. You can't solve the care problem. That is beyond all of our abilities at the moment. And without the if they had internet, I would say try to find online communities, even if they're not face to face. Like, as I said, I followed threads of conversations in other countries to try to figure out what was going on. But then I find myself wondering, whatever happened to so and so and their loved one in Australia? And then I'm on ChatGPT and I'm going down a rabbit hole trying to figure out with these folks, and they become part of your life. Like, I check up in TikTok or on Instagram how people are doing and what's going on. They don't know who I am, but I'm watching, and it's community. It comes down to community at the end of the day, family or otherwise. I didn't have family in Ontario. Bruce's kids, my kids are not Bruce's kids. They're with my first marriage, but Bruce's kids live in Nova Scotia. We're in Ontario. There's no coverage there either. So just having my neighbor come over made a huge difference, Thank you. You're welcome. Have we exhausted everybody? Okay, very important question right now. Riley, what's the score of the women's hockey game? Okay, I didn't ask that question. Thank you for that. We have our sportscaster in the room.
Well, on that happy note, in case anybody wanted to make it for the third period, I just want to offer the Institute's gratitude and thanks to Lisa for sharing her time, experiences, and her journey with us this evening. We're very fortunate at the Institute to have such wonderful friends and supporters who come out and give us their time for this. So thank you so much.
I want to tell a story. Thank you. When it warms my old political heart to be applauded again. It doesn't happen often as a conservative, especially in Nova Scotia. When I mentioned to Linda that I would be absolutely delighted to come and speak at the Brian Mulroney Institute of Government, I really thought I'd be coming to talk about my time as a minister or my time as all this other stuff that I did. And she said very gently, would you mind if you came and talked about Bruce and your journey? I went, sure, okay. You think anyone's going to come? Thank you for coming tonight. I really appreciate it.
Also, another quick round of applause. Thank you to Dr. Katie Aubrecht for doing our work. Thank you very much. So we're coming towards the end of the term, but that doesn't mean that you have to close your agendas for all the events that are still to come. So I'll just give you the next two events that'll be happening. So on Wednesday, Senator Roger Kusner will be coming to talk about his experiences both in the House of Commons and in the Senate. So that'll be here in this room at 7 o'clock. So please come join, ask lots of questions. And then on Monday at 4 o'clock in the floor above us, Dr. Lavinia Stan will be doing a talk on the Epstein files and the lessons that we can learn from the Eastern European secret files. So that'll be at 4 o'clock on Monday in 3022, right upstairs. So if you're available, come on in here. If you haven't heard Dr. Stan speak before, she's got a wealth of knowledge with a great sense of humor to go along with it. So folks, thank you very much for coming out. Stay safe, have safe travels home, and we'll see you at our next event.